Morning sunlight poured through gauzy curtains, painting the kitchen in gold. The kettle whistled softly, the sound merging with birdsong outside. Mark sat at the counter, a steaming mug of coffee before him, phone in hand. His thumb hovered over the glowing screen, his reflection trembling faintly in the black glass. He smiled, the kind of practiced, easy smile that had charmed colleagues, neighbors, strangers alike. Today marked 10 years, a decade of memories, laughter, and love, all carefully curated in pixels and words. He opened his photo gallery, a beach sunset, a candlelit dinner, her hand in his. Each image selected, edited, framed just right. The captions came naturally, flowing like poetry. To my beautiful wife. 10 years of love, growth, and endless gratitude. You've made me a better man. He paused, eyes softening. You really have, he whispered to no one. Mark reread the post, adjusted a word, added a heart emoji. The screen caught the morning light as if it approved. Outside, the wind stirred faintly through the backyard. The earth was dark and damp from last night's rain, a small patch uneven among the trimmed grass. The refrigerator hummed. A clock ticked. Somewhere a drip echoed faintly in the sink. He scrolled once more through the post, nodding to himself, satisfied. It looked genuine, warm, the kind of love everyone envied and believed in. He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. Happy 10 years. My love, he clicked post, the phone screen went black, reflecting only his face and the quiet morning behind him. Then, Mark stood, walked to the sliding glass door, and stepped outside into the backyard silently. By afternoon, Mark's anniversary post had gathered over 100 likes. Heart emojis, comments of envy, old friends typing couple goals. Beneath the smiling photos, he responded graciously, each reply polished, thoughtful, the image of a devoted husband. Outside, the sky had turned overcast, light flattening against the glass. He stood by the sink, phone in hand, reading a message that blinked unanswered. Sister, still haven't heard from Ava. Is she with you? He typed, she's been here all week. Must be a signal issue. Paused, deleted, retyped. She's visiting you, isn't she? Then erased that too. Finally, he locked the screen and slipped the phone into his pocket. When the doorbell rang, Mark exhaled sharply. It was Mrs. Delaney from next door. Cardigan buttoned wrong, holding a basket of muffins. Just wanted to drop these off for Ava, she said. Her eyes flicked past him into the house. Haven't seen her lately. Everything all right? Mark smiled, practiced and easy. She's visiting her sister. Needed a little getaway. You know Ava, always on the move. Mrs. Delaney nodded, though her brow lingered furrowed. Oh well, tell her I said hello. Of course, he said. He took the muffins, thanked her, and closed the door gently. Inside, the silence thickened. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room again, louder now. Mark placed the basket on the counter, stared at it for a long moment, then turned toward the living room. The phone buzzed. A new voicemail. Ava's voice, soft, uncertain. Mark, I think we need to talk. Please call me back. His jaw tightened. He listened once, twice. Then his thumb hovered, and with an almost delicate motion, he tapped delete. The screen blinked. Gone. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Mark's reflection flickered in the darkened window. Calm, collected, unbothered. He whispered to it, everything's fine, and almost believed it. Clara sat on the edge of her bed, phone pressed to her ear, the line ringing into static emptiness. Again. She sighed, thumb tightening on the device. Ava always called back, always. But for the past week, her messages had gone unanswered, each one swallowed by silence. Outside her apartment window, rain smeared the evening city lights into streaks of amber and red. The clock read 9:47 p.m. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. She opened her messages, a row of blue bubbles, unreturned. Then she scrolled down to voicemail number 19, a message she hadn't deleted, though she'd told herself she would. Clara hesitated, then pressed play. Ava's voice crackled through, soft but trembling. Hey, it's me. I just needed to hear your voice. Things have been weird. Mark's been... The recording cut off abruptly, followed by a faint shuffle and a distant door slam before the tone ended it. Clara froze, replayed it, listened again. The fear in her sister's voice wasn't subtle. It was buried under calmness like a tremor beneath glass. She whispered, "Weird how?" Her chest tightened. Sibling intuition, that wordless tether between them, thrummed like a wire stretched too thin. She remembered Ava's laughter, her habit of over-explaining everything, her insistence that Mark's just protective. Clara had laughed then. Now the words sat differently. He was too protective, too quiet. She checked her call log again. Nothing. Not a single return call. Her phone buzzed suddenly. A message from Mark. "Hey, Clara. Ava mentioned she might extend her trip." "She's fine. Probably just needs space." Her stomach dropped. The tone was polite, perfectly casual. Too casual. Clara played the voicemail once more, letting the silence that followed fill the room like smoke. That voice. It didn't sound like a woman on vacation. It sounded like goodbye. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the yard slick and shining under a gray sky. Mark stepped outside, mug in hand, the air heavy with damp earth and the faint scent of smoke from somewhere distant. His slippers sank slightly into the softened ground. He crossed the yard toward the small wooden shed at the back. Its door creaked open, protesting as though it hadn't been touched in days. Inside, the air was thick with oil and cedar, lined with shelves of tools, cords, and jars labeled in his neat handwriting. On the workbench sat the trail camera. A small black box, harmless at first glance. He picked it up, brushing away a film of dust. For raccoons, he'd told the neighbors. They had nodded, amused. He'd smiled. They hadn't asked again. The camera's screen glowed faintly when he pressed the button. He didn't watch long. Just long enough to see shapes, movement, the flicker of a porch light. A figure, maybe two. Then his thumb pressed delete. He removed the SD card, small and weightless between his fingers. For a moment he studied it, as if it might speak. Then he stepped outside again. The fire pit waited near the patch of uneven soil. He knelt, struck a match, and fed the flame. The card curled in the heat, plastic blistering, black smoke twisting into the morning air. Mark watched it burn without expression. The wind carried the smoke toward the fence where it disappeared into nothing. He whispered almost absently, "No trace." The flame dimmed. The ashes scattered. He turned toward the house, eyes blank, face calm. Inside, his phone vibrated on the counter. Clara missed call too. He didn't hear it. By the time Clara reached Ava's house, the sky had cleared into an indifferent blue. The driveway was empty except for Mark's silver sedan glinting in the sun. She sat in her car for a full minute before stepping out, gripping her phone like a shield. Mark opened the door before she could knock. His smile was careful, stretched too thin. "Clara, this is a surprise." "I called," she said. "Right, I was outside." He stepped aside. "Come in, coffee?" The house looked unchanged, yet something in the air felt rearranged. Too quiet, too clean. A vase of lilies sat on the counter, their scent sharp and overbearing. Clara scanned the room, eyes snagging on the framed anniversary photo on the wall. "The same one from his post, so," she began. "You haven't heard from Ava?" Mark exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "We had a fight. She left, needed space. I thought she went to you." Clara frowned. She didn't. He looked down, playing the part of the worried husband. "She'll come around." "She always does," but his tone was flat. Too rehearsed. Clara's gaze drifted toward the stairs. "Mind if I grab something from her room?" She mentioned leaving a sweater here. He hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead, upstairs the air was colder." The bed perfectly made, too perfectly. She sat on the edge, fingers brushing the sheets. Something crinkled beneath. She lifted the mattress. There, a delicate gold necklace tangled in dust. The tiny heart pendant snapped at the clasp. Beside it, a torn photograph. Ava and Mark on that same beach, his arm around her shoulders. Only half her face remained. Downstairs, a floorboard creaked. Clara slipped the necklace into her fist, heartbeat pounding. When she stood, the mirror caught her reflection, pale, tight-lipped, eyes wide with realization something was wrong. Terribly wrong, and she wasn't leaving without answers. Jeremy hadn't seen Mark in weeks. When they finally met for beers one late Friday, Mark looked worn but composed, that deliberate kind of tired people wear when they want to be asked what's wrong. "She's not herself lately," Mark said, swirling the bottle between his palms. Ava's off, moody, paranoid. I think she's going through something. Jeremy nodded, uncertain. Like what? Mark sighed, gaze distant. She says I'm controlling, that I'm hiding things. I tried to get her help, but she won't listen. It's like she's living in her own world. He said it with such calm conviction that Jeremy believed him, at least for a while. Now sitting alone in his apartment, Jeremy scrolled through his feed and saw the anniversary post. The smiling photo of Mark and Ava beneath golden light, the caption dripping with devotion. 10 years. My heart, my home. The contrast made his stomach twist. He couldn't stop thinking about that night. Months ago, Ava had shown up at his doorstep, mascara streaked, trembling. She'd said Mark scared her, that he'd been watching her, checking her phone, keeping her keys for safekeeping. He'd offered her the couch, awkward and unsure. But by morning she was gone. No note, no call. He'd told himself she was just emotional, that couples fought. He hadn't followed up. Now, as he stared at that anniversary photo, the memory replayed differently. Her shaking hands, her voice hoarse and desperate. If something happens, promise you'll tell someone. Jeremy's chest tightened. He opened his messages, scrolling back. Nothing from Ava. Only a few texts from Mark, jokes, weekend plans, casual check-ins. He stared at the smiling man on his screen. The same calm eyes. The same steady grin. Mark's words echoed in his head. She wasn't stable. Jeremy wasn't so sure anymore. The house was quiet again by nightfall. Mark had gone to bed early, claiming a headache. Clara waited until the creak of footsteps above stopped, until silence thickened enough to breathe through. Then she slipped into the guest room. The laptop sat on the small desk by the window, its lid coated with a fine layer of dust. Ava's laptop. She'd used it for work, budgeting, emails. Innocuous things. Clara hesitated, glancing toward the dark hallway, then pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. Password required. She tried a few guesses, birthdays, pet names, her own name. Then she typed Amelia, Ava's childhood doll. The desktop appeared. Folders lined the screen in careful order. Bills, recipes, photos. One near the bottom caught her eye. Taxes 2023. She clicked it. Inside were no spreadsheets, no receipts, only text files, each titled by date. The first entry read, I feel small, like every thought I have is already known to him. He checks my phone, says it's love. He counts the wine bottles, the receipts. He says I lose things when I lie. Clara swallowed hard and opened another. I told him I wanted space. He smiled and said, everything you need is right here. I used to think he meant it kindly. Her hands trembled. She clicked the last file. The timestamp was 3 days before Ava disappeared. Clara read aloud, voice barely above a whisper. If I'm gone, it wasn't a choice. He says he'll fall apart without me, but I think he means he'll make me part of him forever. I'm scared of what he'll do if I leave. Her throat tightened. The cursor blinked in the silence, steady and cruel. A floorboard creaked upstairs. She froze. The house felt alive, listening, watching. Clara closed the laptop gently, clutching her phone with shaking fingers. She opened the dial pad, hesitating only a moment before pressing 911. A voice answered, calm and distant. Emergency services. What's your location? Clara's breath hitched. She whispered, I think my sister's husband did something to her. Red and blue lights pulsed softly against the white siding of the house, staining the night in rhythmic flashes. Mark stood in the doorway, robe tied neatly, expression calm. Behind him, the officers' voices murmured, polite, professional, faintly apologetic. Clara stood by the mailbox, arms crossed, heart drumming so loud it drowned the cicadas. She'd made the call, given the statement, shown them Ava's words. But now, watching them smile and nod at Mark's cooperativeness, dread pooled heavy in her gut. He played the part perfectly, concerned, cooperative. Of course, officers. Search whatever you need, he said, voice smooth, hands open at his sides. They did go through the kitchen, the bedrooms, the shed. The officers took notes, asked routine questions. Nothing unusual. Everything spotless. When one suggested checking the backyard, Mark laughed softly. Afraid it's a swamp out there. Ground still soaked from the rain. You'll ruin your shoes. The officer hesitated, then shrugged. "That's fine, sir. We've seen enough." And just like that, the lights faded. The engines hummed away. Clara watched from her car as Mark stood at the door, waving until the last cruiser turned the corner. Then slowly he shut off the porch light. The house went dark, hours passed. Midnight thinned into the kind of silence that presses on the lungs. Then movement. Mark appeared in the backyard, a faint silhouette under the silvered moon. He carried a shovel over one shoulder and a flashlight in his hand. The beam quivered against the ground as he walked toward the far edge, where the soil had always looked darker. Clara held her breath, watching through the windshield, every nerve drawn tight. The shovel hit earth. A dull rhythmic sound, scrape, lift, fall. Over and over. Then the beam caught something pale, wrapped in plastic. He knelt, gripping it, dragging it deeper toward the trees. Clara's breath broke. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her tears blurred the glass. Her body trembling with the weight of it, the knowing, whatever hope she had, ended with that shovel. By morning, Clara sat in the sterile quiet of the police station, the journals stacked before her like fragile evidence of a vanished life. The detectives leafed through the printed pages, their brows furrowing as the words sank in. Detective Ramos read aloud softly, almost to himself. He says, "I forget things that never happened. Sometimes I believe him. Sometimes I wonder if he's right." The hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence that followed. Clara's fingers twisted around a tissue, knuckles white. They had taken her statement. They had listened, politely, cautiously. But it wasn't until the pages began speaking for Ava that the room changed. The journals unfolded in fragments, like a confession written in slow descent. "He checks the odometer every time I drive. Says it's for safety. He asked me to delete my social media. Said it made me anxious. Said it was better if I didn't compare myself to others. He keeps a list of my mistakes. Calls them teaching moments." Each entry bled into the next, the voice tightening with fear, shrinking from the man who smiled for neighbors and held doors open for strangers. He says, "I'm lucky he still loves me. That no one else would." Clara blinked hard, forcing the tears back. Across the table, Ramos sighed, tapping his pen against the page. "These are consistent with coercive control patterns," he said quietly. Isolation, gaslighting, classic abuser behavior. The second detective, Patel, looked up. "And this last part?" Ramos turned the page. The final entry scrolled in trembling font. "He told me if I ever leave him, he'll ruin me, one way or another." "I believe him." Clara closed her eyes. The room seemed to shrink around her, air thinning. "She tried to warn us," she whispered. "We just didn't listen." Ramos slid the journals into an evidence bag, sealing it with a firm press. "We'll find out what happened," he said. Clara looked up at him, voice low but certain. "You have no idea who he really is." The next morning broke gray and windless. Mark's house sat still under a low sky, curtains drawn. The perfect picture of quiet suburbia. Then came the low hum of engines, the crunch of gravel, and flashing red-blue lights spilling over the neat white siding once more. Detective Ramos stepped out first, warrant in hand. Behind him, a K9 unit strained against its lead, nose pressed to the damp earth. Clara watched from the curb, arms wrapped tight around herself. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Mark opened the door as if expecting guests. His voice was calm, even warm. "Officers, back again?" Ramos met his gaze evenly. "We're conducting a search, Mr. Ellis. The backyard this time." For a brief second, something in Mark's jaw flickered. Not fear, not surprise, but irritation, quickly smoothed away. "Of course," he said, "if it puts everyone's mind at ease." The detectives moved past him. Boots sank into the soft ground behind the shed. The air smelled of wet mulch and iron. The dog began to whine, pawing at the edge of the garden bed. Its handler knelt. "Right here." Ramos nodded. "Start digging." The first shovelful of dirt came up dark and rich. Another, then another. The rhythm of metal against soil echoed through the yard. Something pale surfaced, fabric, frayed and dirt-streaked. A corner of floral print. Then, caught in the loosened soil, a thin glint of gold. A ring. One of the officers froze. "Sir, you need to see this." Ramos crouched down, eyes narrowing. His hand trembled slightly as he brushed the dirt aside. A few strands of hair caught the wind, fine, golden brown. Behind them, Mark stood motionless. His expression never changed. When Ramos turned toward him, voice steady but edged with disbelief, Mark only smiled faintly. "I told her," he said, tone quiet, almost tender. "We'd be together forever." The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. As the detectives led him past the garden bed, Clara stepped forward. For a moment, his eyes met hers, flat, hollow, unreadable, and still, impossibly, he smiled. The photo that once glowed with love now burned through the internet like wildfire. The anniversary post, 10 years of devotion, one perfect smile, and the caption that read, "Happy 10 years, my love." By the time Mark was transferred to county jail, the post had gone viral. It wasn't romance anymore. It was evidence. News anchors dissected it frame by frame, zooming into the reflection in his eyes, the shadows behind him, the timestamp. Threads of strangers debated everything, from the lighting to the captions, to whether his smile had always looked like that. Clara watched from her couch, exhausted, numb. Every network had turned her sister's life into an evening segment. The garden bed murder. Hashtags trended. Comment sections buzzed with theories. Jeremy sat in his apartment, TV flickering. He'd given his statement that morning, voice hoarse, guilt heavy in every word. "She came to me once," he'd told reporters, "begged me for help. I didn't believe her." His phone rang with interview requests he ignored. The story wasn't his to own, but it haunted him all the same. Detective Ramos appeared on screen next, his tone measured. "Evidence suggests a pattern of control and manipulation over several years. This wasn't a sudden act. It was a life built on quiet cruelty." Then came the headline that cracked. The calm. Sources confirm Mark Ellis's first wife, Lillian, died by apparent suicide in 2012. Old photos resurfaced. Lillian's bright smile beside Mark's steady grin. The resemblance to Ava was uncanny. Clara stood before a crowd of reporters outside the courthouse, cameras flashing like lightning. Her voice was low but unshaking. "He buried her twice," she said, eyes burning beneath the flashbulbs. First emotionally, then literally. The quote spread faster than the post itself. Inside his cell, Mark sat on his narrow cot, staring at the concrete wall. The glow from the TV mounted outside flickered faintly against his face. His own smiling photo staring back at him. For the first time, the mask slipped. His lips trembled, the calm cracking. And still, the post stayed up. The garden was different now. Softer, peaceful. The police tape, the cameras, the whispers, all long gone. Only the sound of wind through lilies and the slow hum of summer filled the air. Clara knelt by the flower bed, her hands buried in soil that no longer frightened her. She had chosen wildflowers, ones Ava used to press between book pages and forget about. Their colors bled together in the sunlight, a quiet rebellion against what had once been hidden there. A full year had passed. The world had moved on, or at least pretended to. The documentaries had aired, the podcasts had dissected, the algorithms had shifted. But grief didn't trend. It lingered. Clara brushed the dirt from her palms and opened the small, weathered notebook she always carried now. Ava's. The spine was cracked, its pages fragile from rereading. Her voice trembled as she read aloud. "Even when it's quiet, I feel him everywhere. The air changes when he walks into a room. But I still believe in small escapes, sunlight, laughter, my sister's voice on the phone. That's what keeps me alive." Clara closed the journal slowly. "You're free now," she whispered, "and I'm still here." A breeze lifted her hair, scattering petals across the grass like confetti at the end of something sacred. She smiled through her tears. Miles away, in a gray cell the size of a walk-in closet, Mark Ellis sat on his cot, tracing the edge of an envelope that had arrived with morning mail. No return address, no handwriting he recognized. Inside, a single card, white, simple, across the center in blue ink, "Happy Anniversary." He stared at it for a long time, his fingers trembling. Then, Slowly, inevitably, he smiled. The sound that followed was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He folded the card once, twice, pressed it to his forehead. For the first time in his life, there was no audience, no camera, no mask, only silence. And in that silence, as the card slipped from his hand to the cold floor, he finally felt buried too.